Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of ScaleUp Radio, the podcast inspired by the Entrepreneurial ScaleUp System and designed to make navigating our scale-up journeys that little bit easier by learning from others' experiences. I'm Kevin Brent, and today we dive into the inspiring story of Sophie Preston-Hall. And Sophie's the dynamic founder of Catering Elite. And with just £300 and a vision, Sophie transformed a simple idea into a leading specialist recruitment agency in the hospitality and catering industry. And despite facing the daunting challenges of COVID-19, 180,000 VAT miscalculation, and the complexities of managing a diverse workforce, Sophie's unwavering resilience and deep industry insight have steered Catering Elite through 22 years of growth and innovation. And from levering technology like WhatsApp in an interesting way to mastering the art of the work-life balance for her team, Sophie's journey is a testament to the power of perseverance, strategic thinking, and a true passion for her industry. And you're going to love this episode, and you're not going to want to miss any future episodes of ScaleUp Radio either. So you can subscribe to us wherever you like to listen to your podcasts, and you can also nominate a guest like Sophie for ScaleUp Radio if you know someone with an interesting scale-up story, and you can find out how in the show notes. So for now, join us with Sophie as we uncover the secrets behind her success, the lessons learned from setbacks, and her plans for the future in this compelling episode of ScaleUp Radio. Welcome to another episode of ScaleUp Radio. I'm delighted today to be joined by Sophie Preston-Hall, who is the Managing Director of Catering Elite. So, Sophie, welcome to ScaleUp Radio.
Thank you very much for having me.
No, absolute pleasure. Looking forward to it. So, Catering Elite, bit of an idea, but actually, what's that all about?
Well, basically, we are a specialist recruitment agency supplying solely to the hospitality and the catering industry. I started off life as a waitress, working as a temp myself for agencies and within the sector in various different guises, behind bars, waiting on functions. And I just saw a niche in the market for an agency that solely supplies to the hospitality industry, completely run and operated by people who know the industry best.
Brilliant. So that's what sets you apart from certainly from general recruitment agencies, is that being very focused on the catering sector, hospitality sector. Absolutely.
I mean, you can find a myriad of agencies who are multitasked, multi-skilled, and quite often the catering consultant is that. It's a recruitment consultant who's got a very strong recruitment industry background, and they're very good at what they do. Our USP is that we know our chef de parties from our executive head chefs, and it's such a vast, different industry. One person's head chef can be another person's CDP. One chef can work in a kitchen on its own. Another chef can be in with 15 other chefs. And we absolutely know what we're looking for. If a hotel or a function or an outside caterer come to us, or a care home, we know the difference and what we're looking for. We like to say that we're caterers who work in recruitment, not recruitment consultants who work in catering.
Okay. Fantastic. And how does the business model work for you? What might be a bit different there? How do you charge? How does the money flow?
Oh gosh, good question. The business model probably doesn't work that differently from normal agencies. So we do three different types. So we do permanent placements where we charge on the percentage of the first annual wage that the person involved will be paid. And then we do temps, which is our mainstay. We mainly do temps, and we charge an hourly rate, and then the temps are all paid by us, and we only pay PAYE. We used to be able to take on self-employed chefs, but unfortunately the government made it too difficult for us with tidying up all the IR35 laws, so we just pay PAYE now, and then we do temp to perms, which is sort of in the middle.
Great. And what sort of stage would you say you're at on your scale-up journey? Can you give us an idea of where you are?
That's a really interesting question, actually, because we are almost 22 years old.
Right. Okay.
So I started Catering Elite 22 years ago in Blackpool, with less than £300 to my name and no prior business experience, and just an idea of what I wanted to do. To say that it has been a roller coaster would be absolute understatement, because I've managed to weather not only sort of the personal issues that everybody encounters, but a worldwide recession, and of course the pandemic. And in the pandemic, we had a terrifying time because we weren't classed as hospitality and catering business. We were classed as a recruitment business. Right. So we weren't given a lot of the safety nets and assistance that everybody else in the hospitality industry was gone. However, my order book went overnight, and we were due to have the busiest year that we'd ever had that year. And I remember the Tuesday it happened, and it just went.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the, there's lots of pros about focusing on a niche, which you've done, and that should mean that you can
absolutely
competitive advantage. But of course, there are some risks, and that risk of the pandemic is one that none of us could have predicted. But of course, it essentially wiped out your customer base, didn't it? Completely.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I had to box very, very clever. And I do think that part of being a business person and an entrepreneur is having to sort of think outside the box, because while everybody was sort of sitting at home enjoying life on 80% of their salary, waiting it out, I kind of didn't have that luxury. Although I will say that my branch manager in Blackpool, who's been with me for 14 years, I kept him on furlough at 100% of salary for, until about a year and a half, because it wasn't his fault. So I did try very hard to be very fair with him, because he's worked hard for me for a long time, and good staff are hard to get and find and keep, and it is a two-way street. But it was I had to do a lot of robbing Peter to pay Paul for about 2 years, and we had no idea how long it was going to last.
Absolutely. So what sort of, how have you bounced back? What sort of stage are you back at now, would you say?
Well, like I said, it's been a roller coaster. So as soon as we came out of lockdown, so during lockdown, I took the bounce back loan and the VAT holiday that they gave us, although I did make sure that I paid the VAT back monthly so that I didn't have a massive, great big bill as soon as we came out of it. So that did help us a lot as well. But as soon as we came out of it, we went from minus 60 to 100. Because everybody wanted to go out, everybody wanted to get married, and nobody had any staff. So I did find myself sort of working about 16-hour days, trying to get in the staff as soon as possible. And I mean, we more than doubled our pre-pandemic turnover.
Wow.
For 2 years in a row, and it was just phenomenal. Currently at the moment, it's sliding again at the moment. We're finding it has quietened off a lot. Various different reasons. I think people have managed to get their staffing levels back up again, which is good. But also, I think the cost of living crisis and the current political climate is not helping at all, and everybody's just a little bit more cautious. So it's very swings around. Every time we try and grow, I'm not going to lie, something happens that does scupper us a little bit. But we're still here. We're still profitable, and we're still loving what we do for a living.
And how big is the team?
At the moment, I've scaled back considerably again. Last year we did I did grow the team quite considerably to help with the work increase, but for various different reasons that didn't work out, and it's just at the moment it's myself and Lee again. So I head up the East Anglia, so we do a huge area down here, Newmarket, Woodbridge, Ipswich, Chelmsford, Colchester, can go into London, Brentwood, Bury St Edmunds, and then Lee does Blackpool, Preston, Manchester, that kind of stuff.
Very good. And what are some of the key? I mean, we've talked a bit about the pandemic and the recession and things. What are some of the the challenges of working, providing recruitment services within the catering sector, do you think that might be a bit different? What are some of your big challenges you face on a day-to-day basis?
Personalities. You get very strong personalities, especially with the chefs, because they're very, very creative. So very strong personalities, and they're not, I probably shouldn't say this, but they're not always great at being told what to do by a woman. I have had that, although that is getting better, but I have had that a lot through my career. But personalities, and it's also very, not so much with my chefs. Majority of my chefs have been with me long term, and we do tend to keep our temp chefs for years rather than weeks or months. But with our waiting on team, it can be quite transient. So, you're getting to know somebody and then they move on. But again, we have been very, very lucky. I do believe, and I need to try and find out if I can find this out. I do believe that we have Britain's longest serving temporary member of staff. So I've got a chap in Blackpool who basically I found almost as soon as I set up in Blackpool, nearly 22 years ago, Danny Cullen, and he's worked for me for nearly 22 years. He's a temp waiter, and he has temped for me for nearly 22 years.
Amazing. That's fantastic. And you clearly love what you're doing. What is it that you love about what you do?
I really love what I do. I'm so lucky. They do say find a job that you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And it really is that. Many reasons. I've got an amazing team. Although I have just said it's just myself and Lee, I've got about 150 temps who work for us. And like I said, a lot of them have been with me long term and stay with me. I'd say the majority. I love the adrenaline rush of it. So I don't think that I could do a job where you're always doing the same thing. So I could be sitting here chatting to you, Kevin, and my phone goes and somebody needs 10 waiters tomorrow, and I literally have to stop everything. I am on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but I have really understanding friends. So we can be out and about, and on a Saturday or a Sunday, and I can be having dinner with somebody, or I can be out with all my friends, and my phone just goes, and it's one of my clients needs a chef right away or tomorrow. And, my friends have actually even sat there with me trying to go through all the lists and, maybe they will do good there, and I'm really lucky. But it's also enabled me to stay in an industry that I love passionately, hospitality, while and servicing it, while earning a nice living.
Brilliant. And what would you change, if anything? What frustrates you? What would you change?
I don't think I would change much, if I'm honest. I have noticed a difference in people's attitudes since the coming out of lockdown. It's been harder to find. We've really struggled to find people to work in the offices as recruitment consultants. Everybody wants the nice big salaries that we pay, but doing what we do, and I like to think that Lee and I make it look easy. It really, really isn't. It's, sometimes you have to put a square peg in a round hole.
Right.
And you have to think very, again, it doesn't look like I do, but my brain is an absolute computer, and the knowledge that I keep up there, and I'm brilliant for names. So a client came to us today, and Lee phoned me up about it, and I said, you know what? I'm sure that we sent them one email about 6 months ago, and they never replied. And somebody can come to me, and I'm going, do you know? I think they interviewed 19 years ago and then never turned up to work. And, but it is very challenging. It's, your good days can be up there with the best days of your life, and the worst days you just want to go home and never see anybody ever again. Yeah. And it is that can be a challenge.
Yeah, and I can imagine not everyone listening would relish that idea of picking the call when they're out with their mates and having to.
No, it's that can be. We try to make it as attractive as possible, so people coming into the business don't have to be on call all the time. I do it through choice, so does Lee.
Right.
But we have worked out things where they don't have to be. But unfortunately, it is hospitality. The office is open 8:30 till 5 Monday to Friday, but as you very well know, hospitality doesn't work that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's the legacy you want to leave? What's the long term aim? You know, are you going to keep doing this forever into your 80s, 90s, whatever? Or what's the goal? What's the plan?
Well, again, funnily enough, I have been thinking about this recently and an exit strategy. I have sort of, I'm not going to put a timeline on it because I know in my head, but I can't see myself ever retiring, to be honest. I do love, and it does give me a good work-life balance. So although I have just said some of the bad things and, you know, you're out having dinner and things like that, also I can go about my day to day. And as long as I've got an internet connection on my mobile with me, I can pretty much work from anywhere. I mean, I ran one of our biggest jobs once from Dubai a couple of years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, we deal with a huge client up in Newmarket, and we have a massive contract with them every October. And I ran the whole thing from Dubai a couple of years ago. So, you know, I do love that I have that ability as well. So, would I sell it? Not overly convinced I would. And I don't think my son would want to take it over, but I don't think I can retire either because I generally do love what I do for a living.
Okay, good. And how did you find Lee? He's obviously a key person for you.
Well, funny story, actually. I actually found him from a recruitment agency. So I set the company up in Blackpool, and then when I had my little boy, who's now not so little, nearly 19, I moved home to Essex and needed somebody up in Blackpool to basically front the agency up there. Went through a few different people, just couldn't find what I was looking for, and in the end a recruit to recruit agency actually contacted me, and I took him on, and so that was the best money I've ever spent because he's been with me about 14 years now. But I have tried recruit to recruit agencies since, and it's never worked so far.
So is that part of the plan to have other Lees around the country?
It was. We got our fingers quite badly burnt last year, and I won't go into details, but we did have to get the police involved.
Oh.
I was trying to open up another 2 to 3 different branches last year, but we did get our fingers quite badly burnt. So I never say never. At the moment, we're quite happy just, you know, doing what we're doing, and we're still scaling up. Just with us two, you know, we're still expanding. We're still scaling up. But yeah. And
Lee and was it going to be the same arrangement with Lee for these other territories? And is Lee essentially an employee, or is he?
He's an employee. He paid monthly PAYE, pension scheme, the whole kit and caboodle. The other chap that we had to get the police involved with, he was also. I only ever do PAYE because I think it's fair on them. Everybody knows where they stand if they're getting a monthly salary, I just find it works easier.
And I was wondering, you know, just go a bit further. You know, how you mentioned you've got your brain's like a computer, and you've got all of this in your head. How much of that is in processes that you have written down and documented for Catering Elite?
It is a really difficult job to train somebody up in. Really hard, especially in the beginning, because they almost have to just sit and watch you fill bookings for quite some time, and it is quite and it's because it can be very logistical as well. So you can have everything mapped down, everybody is set where they're meant to be, and then somebody will throw a spanner in the works because they'll need a different chef there, and well, you can put this chef there, but he's already booked here and he won't go here, and she doesn't like working with him and he can't drive there, and in half an hour the whole map can look completely different, and you've just spent half a day redoing what you've just spent the previous week doing. So it is a lot harder than it looks.
If you had the right person, could you plug and play in a different region like you did with Blackpool?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we tried to do with Manchester last year.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we tried to do. And I wanted to do it in Newmarket, and we had Chelmsford ready to go. And the end game was London, because I started off my career in London.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you looked at other models, other ways of doing it other than employing somebody on POA?
I'm considering it. I have a very close friend of mine who thinks that I should sort of take them on almost on a freelance basis. So yeah, so that is a consideration. I think at the moment we have to let the economic climate settle down a little bit and people not quite so jittery. But yeah, again, never say never. And I passionately believe in what we do and the business model that we have. And it would be lovely to be able to do that.
Very good. Okay. So strategically, you've been very strong on your positioning, and that's got you to where you are today and got you your reputation. Yes, there's been a little bit of a hiccup along the way with COVID, with the pandemic, but by and large, that served you really, really well. What about from a people point of view then, what have you're dealing with people all the time, you're placing people as well as managing Lee, but what sort of things have you learned from a people perspective along the way?
Gosh, now there's a question. The work ethic, again, is not as good as it was. One of the things that I'm trying to do at the moment is I really want to set up some things with working with younger people, because again, going back to the pandemic, I think that it's had a much more detrimental impression and effect on their mental health than we're giving them, than anybody is admitting to at the moment.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe I was just brought up in a different era where we just went to work and that was it. But there does seem to be a slight entitlement these days, which concerns me. But I don't necessarily think it's their fault. I think social media is a lot to blame. Because when we were growing up, the heroes of our day were footballers and models and pop stars and things like that. And they actually did things. Today it's influencers. And I find that all a little bit bizarre, really, if I'm honest. So sometimes it worries me about some of the entitlement that I see.
Yeah.
Because I will still go out and tempt sometimes, not very often, not going to lie, but occasionally I will, and I don't mind putting on the marigolds and sticking my hands in a sink if it needs doing. And I'm finding more and more and more that they won't.
Yeah. You're right. I think it's dangerous to put it all on them, but there is a change. I think it has had an effect.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of people we work with in hospitality, and one of the comments was they interview people for a full-time waitressing job or whatever it might be, or a waitress job, and questions are, well, I prefer if I only worked, these hours of the day. And would it be all right if I had Thursdays off? And that's not really, of all the sectors, the hospitality sector is clearly not one really where you've got some flexibility, but there's limits, absolute limits.
No, absolutely. And, we took on somebody in one of the offices recently, who started with us and was doing absolutely brilliant, and then just kept moving the goalposts and wanted to work less and less and less and less and less. Yeah. And in the end, it just wasn't working.
And I wonder, I wonder if that really hit the hospitality sector more than many others, because as a general thing, people had a chance to think about their lives and what they wanted to do anyway, didn't they, over that period, and go, this is actually what I want to do moving forwards. But I wonder whether, do you think it hit the hospitality sector even harder in that respect, because clearly everything properly shut down?
100%. And I think the pandemic hit the hospitality sector more than it probably hit any other sector, but in so many different ways, not just that, but also the work from home. Now, people might not think that the work from home era that we now seem to be in would have hit the hospitality sector so much. But if you take London, for example, and everybody now is working from home rather than working in London, well, that's having a detrimental impact on the wine bars, the shops, the cafes, the sandwich shops in the area that are all relying on that footfall that is now not going there. And I've been to London several times since the pandemic, and it has a very different atmosphere than it does pre-pandemic, in my humble opinion.
Yeah. So if we're looking at, what's the trends, what's going on in your sector, you're being squeezed at both ends of the spectrum. Really, you've got the end customer, as in the people going out and dining out, maybe not doing it in quite the same way as they were, and quite so often. But also at the other end, you've got a challenge with your supply, haven't you? So the demand and the supply are both quite tricky for you at the minute. So
absolutely. Absolutely. And then if you throw into that mix the cost of living crisis and that people don't want to spend as much money, it's crazy.
Yeah. So and yet you sound like you're doing pretty well. So what do you think you're doing that's enabling you to weather that storm?
Well, I've always been quite a game old girl, and I like to just do everything to the best that I possibly can. And I believe in positivity. I know that sounds a bit cliched, but I do believe that can get you through most things. I mean, I remember that first lockdown press conference when Boris Johnson did tell us that was it. We were all staying at home, and I just sat there. I'm not too big to admit I cried my eyes out because I just thought, that's it. I'm toast. I'm just going to lose everything. But the next day I put my big girl pants on and contacted every single care home and school that I could lay my hands on, or any type of establishment that I thought wasn't being locked down and might have a problem with staff. And that's literally how we got through lockdown. So I think it's just, like I said at the beginning of this chat, thinking outside the box and just believing in myself and believing in the ability of myself and my staff, and knowing that what we do is amazing, and that we are pretty amazing, and that we do it better than everybody else, and that we will always, be there to service our clients' needs and to help them get through these difficult waters that we're in.
Yeah. So did that in a funny way, did that open up some more avenues for you then? The fact that you had to in lockdown look for some alternative companies to supply staff to, and has that all continued? Does that open up new avenues essentially?
Yeah. We're doing more schools and care homes than we did pre-pandemic. Yeah. I mean, especially with my branch, we do seem to be the school's agency of choice. So a lot of them come to us now, and my chefs love it because it is giving them a little bit more quality of life. They're not doing the evenings, they're not doing the weekends. They absolutely do love it. It did open up a couple of other avenues.
Great. So other than having a computer-like brain, how do you manage all the complexities of people going all over the place, different shifts, different
spreadsheets?
It's all spreadsheet managed, is it?
Spreadsheet. I do have a database that we like every recruitment agency. We have a database that we put all our staff on, and we can do it on there. I'm very old school, and I'll be honest with you. Until last year, it was a paper diary, because that's how I started. I mean, when I started my career, the internet was all pretty much in its infancy. You'd put a advert in the Standard, and people would send you their CVs. I mean, I remember one of my first ever jobs when I didn't really know what I was doing was for a company in Golden Square, and they wanted me to set up a catering desk for them, and they gave me a desk, a filing cabinet, and a telephone, and one of those roller deck things. So it's changed quite considerably, but I'm very old school. I have a spreadsheet. I can see it all there on my computer. So spreadsheets.
Great. And what are the barriers to entry like for somebody? If I wanted to set up and do what you do, what hurdles would I need to jump through?
I think the recruitment agency is almost not saturation, because I don't think that will ever happen, but I think it is very, very flooded, because everybody in their cat does seem to think that it's quite an easy way to make money and that they can do it. I mean, the amount of chefs that I've had come to me, I'm not going to mention names, but I did have one chef try and shut me down, and I've had two actually. One of them sent me a letter basically saying, could I give him my entire database because he was going to set up his own agency, and mine would therefore cease to exist. Which was mildly entertaining when he came to me for a job 4 years later and forgot who I was. And that did entertain me. And the second chef that tried to do it as well, he just emailed me about 2 months ago actually wanting a job. I'm like, no, okay, thanks. So it's not as easy as it looks, but I firmly believe that if you have a passion and an idea and just a simple idea that you just want to do it better,
yeah,
you'll be fine.
Good. Okay. What have you learned about managing the cash over the years? I mean, obviously you had that real challenge through lockdown, and you take the bounce back loan, and you paid furlough for Lee and everything. But how do you keep on top of the cash?
Right, now I do have quite an interesting story for you on this one, and this was a real squeaky bum moment for me. But the short version of this story is always watch the figures yourself. Make sure that you know exactly what is coming in, what is going out, and what everything is. So when I first set up, I had £300 to my name, as I said in the beginning, no prior business experience. I hadn't even been a manager for very long. Really didn't know what I was doing. So the first thing that I did do is I took on an accountant, and as I had no cash flow to help me, I took on a factoring company as well. To help sort of, so that I have money to pay the temps and then charge the clients.
Yeah.
So the accountant was doing my counting for me and everything. And I was self-employed. I was a sole trader. Nobody had told me not to be. Nobody had given me the pros and the cons or anything like that. And the accountant was also doing my VAT every quarter. And I thought, no, that's fine. 3 years in, and I get VAT looked at by the HMRC, investigated. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, not a problem. This will be fine. Absolutely. Walk in the park. Got an accountant for this. Absolutely no problem. Unfortunately, my accountant had never dealt with a factoring company before and had been doing the figures wrong for 3 years. And I owed my VAT man £180,000. And because I wasn't a limited company, I personally owed it.
Oh, my goodness.
Yep.
How on earth did you cope with that?
Well, I lost my son, unfortunately. I was 29 weeks pregnant at the time. And I think the stress actually did cause me to lose Darcy. But when I sort of got over the shock, again, I put my big girl pants on and my positive smile on. And I got in touch with a friend of mine who's very good with financing and sort of, has my back. And I sort of said, what the hell do I do? Because there was no way I was going to go bankrupt. That stays with you forever for a start. And it's also quite expensive to go bankrupt, which has always baffled me. But I just bought my first house with my ex-husband. And they take your house and everything. So I'm like, no, if I owe a bill, I pay it as well. So it just didn't sit well with me. So I went into a voluntary IVA, and the VAT man the HMRC gave me 5 years to pay it off. And I worked my little tushy off and I paid it off in full in 2.5 years and then came home to Essex.
Amazing. Wow. What an incredible story, and obviously really sorry to hear about your baby that you lost. But yeah, goodness me.
Well, it's amazing what you can do when you put your mind to it, and it's I wasn't going to let it beat me. And like I said, if I owe money, I pay it. End of story. And I just wasn't going to. I built up, and my company had gone quite quickly. Kablooey. It had gone brilliant, it really taken off very, very, very fast. And there was no way that I was going to have that all taken away from me. Yeah. So I managed to pay it off in full in 2.5 years. But you'd be amazed what you can do when you put your mind to it.
Well, that absolutely. Hats off to you. And I think there's a really good lesson in there about VAT, because the moment you try and do something a little bit different from the norm, you've got to make sure that it is right from the VAT aspect, and that
absolutely.
And ideally, it's almost impossible to get it in writing, but whatever you can do to check and get that documented, so that you don't get caught out 3 years down the line. I had a similar thing with a business that I ran many years ago. We were placing nannies essentially in different places, and we wanted to do it all above board. So we wanted to make sure that we were doing it correctly and paying correctly, but we got approval to only charge VAT on our margin, essentially, that we made, and we got that agreed by them. But I never got that in any kind of documentation. And then 3 years down the line, a very, very similar to you, got a VAT inspection, and they wanted 150,000 from us, and there was no way that we were in a position to be able to do that. And essentially, we argued it, made the but had to put the business into liquidation on the basis.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Because we couldn't continue to trade, because we were in a position where we couldn't. As directors, we couldn't continue trading, knowing that we were technically insolvent, and we argued it. And 6 months later, they reversed their decision. But by that point, we'd lost the business and everything. So yes, I can identify with that, and I think it's a really good lesson for anybody listening that is setting up and they're not quite sure about the VAT treatment or otherwise, to make sure they've got it nailed down and there isn't
absolutely and take advice. Actually, the one thing I've had quite a few tribulations with the HMRC over the years, and I have won them all, apart from that one, but there was no winning or losing because I did owe the money. But the only problem with the HMRC is that you are dealing with computer says no. However, in my experience, if you do talk to them and you're upfront with them, they will help you, or they will say what you can do and what you can't do and things like that. So,
and do you still use a factoring company?
Yes, I do. But I keep an eye out. But I do my own VAT now. and ever since then, I've done my own VAT.
And factoring is an interesting one, because there might be people listening. There's different views about factoring. Some people will say, "Oh no, if you can avoid it, definitely avoid it." Other people say, need it. So, what's your thoughts on factoring?
So my thoughts are, it frees up my cash flow, so I don't have to make sure that I've got goodness knows how much in the bank to pay my staff. The most important thing to me is that every single member of my team, whether they work 4 hours a week, 4 hours a month, 40 hours a week, for me permanently, gets paid correctly and on time. So it just alleviates the worry of cash flow. And it alleviates, and one of the biggest problems that small businesses have this historically is people paying them, which I think is horrifying, really. I think it shouldn't be a thing, but the most small businesses go under because companies don't pay on time. We've never really had that problem. I think we've had 3 non-payers in 22 years, and for minimal amounts, which is brilliant. But we have had payers that don't pay on time, and with a factoring company you don't have to worry about that, and also they do your payroll, so it's sort of we input it and then they run it and everything. Great. So it takes all of that stress away from us.
Good. So for you it works, it's almost essential, and the percentage fee that they charge makes it is worthwhile in the light of
pays for itself, in my opinion.
Good. So you look back, we've obviously had one big challenge that you had with the VAT aspect, but if you look back over those 22 years, apart from that one, with the benefit of hindsight, what, if anything, would you have done differently?
What would I have done differently? I think I would have tried harder to grow the business years ago, but I think my problem is that I'm too hands-on. I like to do it all myself. I'm not very good at handing over the reins. I started the business completely on my own. When I started, I was working as a waitress in a hotel, doing the business and working as a barmaid as well. I just remember phoning my mother up in tears because I hadn't slept for 3 days and I hadn't eaten for 4 and everything. So I think I probably would have tried to bring more people into the team.
Yeah. Okay. And what is the legacy that you want to leave? What's it all for at the end of the day? What's the legacy you want to leave?
That I did my job well.
Okay.
That I was good at what I do.
Yeah.
That's, as long as people say and think that, then that's fine. I just, I work very, very hard. I know that my inner circle knows that, but a lot of other people sometimes don't always.
Yeah.
But yeah, that I'm good at what I do and I work hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And you obviously had a little bit of a setback last year. Is that stopped? Has that put you off trying to open up more branches?
At the moment, it has, yeah, 100%. Yeah. I mean, just the charge sheet that we had to do against this chap was just horrible. But never say never. And yeah, next year it'll probably be different. I'll probably go, let's try again with Manchester. And we've got such a good client base down here that I'd like to open up more offices. So yeah, I think once we've got the general election out of the way and things like that, and things politically might be a little bit smoother, I'll have a rethink.
And looking back on it, was there anything was it just one of these very unlucky things that you couldn't have done anything about, or looking back on it, is there something you could do differently next time that would have avoided it?
No, it was, we interviewed him, I interviewed him, Lee interviewed him. Yeah. It was just one of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Oh, brilliant. Well, I fascinating, amazing stories. Some of the resilience that you've had to show over those years,
Thank you.
And I really, I love businesses that are very clear on their niche and where they play. And you've obviously managed to carve that out beautifully and create a very successful business over the years. So well done to you. And thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing that story on ScaleUp Radio. Are you okay for a couple of quick fire questions before we close?
Oh, crikey. Put me on the spot. Yeah, go on then.
Yeah. And before I let you go for what's probably not going to be a relaxing Easter weekend, is it? I imagine you've got all sorts of things you need to sort out for hospitality of the weekend. But what if you could go back to your younger self then?
Right.
What advice would you give yourself?
Do my own VAT. Yeah. All right. 100%.
All right. Good. Are there any resources that you've found particularly useful, whether they be books or podcasts or training courses or anything that you'd recommend to others?
So most people have sort of rock stars as their heroes. Mine tend to be business people. Steve Bartlett does the most amazing podcasts ever. And I just think, as you probably guessed, I can talk the hind legs of a donkey. I think I'd be very tongue-tied if I met him. And Deborah Meaden and Karen from The Apprentice are just massive heroes of mine.
Right.
Things like that. We're members of the FSB, and their legal helpline is invaluable. So anybody that was thinking of starting up, we've had to use their legal helpline. Well, last year we did. A few times, and their legal helpline just pays for itself. That's brilliant. Yeah. The recruitment industry is unregulated, so as you probably no doubt aware. So we pay through the nose to be members of the REC, which is the Recruitment and Employment Confederation, to make sure that our clients know that we do things properly. And every 2 years, I have to do this horrific exam. to prove that my employment law and my employment knowledge is up to scratch, and it gives me sleepless nights for weeks. But yeah, so just any resources out there. When I first started up, the Prince's Trust were amazing. In fact, I did a talk for them a little while ago. They were absolutely phenomenal. And Business Link were also brilliant. Yeah. I don't think they're there anymore, though.
Not in the same way, no.
No, which I think is really sad because they were amazing. I've also entered quite a few awards over the years, and I've won quite a few awards. Yes. And I would recommend highly anybody doing awards. One of the reasons that I do them, apart from the fact that going to the awards ceremony is bally good fun, and the networking there is just phenomenal, it's really a good way to reevaluate your business all the time, because you can make the mistake of writing a business plan, putting it into a filing cabinet, and you never look at it ever again. So doing these awards sometimes is like writing a business plan and thinking, right, what do I want to do in 5 years' time? What do I want to do next year? What did we do last year? And things like that. The first award that I ever won was, I think, a year after I started, and it was the Shell Live, and this is how long ago it was. It was the Shell Livewire Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award. So yeah, back in 2003, I think I won that.
Excellent. Very good. So awards are a key part of your marketing strategy, really, with the raising awareness and
absolutely.
How else do you find clients? What's your key?
They tend to find us, actually. They tend to find us. So it tends to be a lot of word of mouth. We deal with a lot of large groups who have multiple units as well. We've got quite a good rating on Google. Although we don't always get a good rating on Google, you do tend to find that, firing people doesn't make them like you very much. And occasionally I have to do that, unfortunately. But I always reply to each and every review that we have on Google. So because there's always two sides to every story, isn't there? So they tend to find us.
Excellent. Good. Are there any apps or bits of tech? Obviously everything's on spreadsheets, but are there any apps and bits of tech that you use within the business? Or
WhatsApp has become quite a good tool. So we always with our temps as well, we send them out a confirmation message. Once they've agreed to a job, we'll send them out a confirmation message, and then we'll reconfirm and things. But WhatsApp changed a few years ago where you couldn't send to more than 5 people. And we found that quite difficult, because we used to, and still do, send out job alerts through WhatsApp, and it got quite cumbersome remembering who you sent it to. And I've recently, it's probably been out there for ages, but I'm not very technologically minded, recently discovered their broadcast lists, and that's brilliant. So we use their broadcast lists, and it's really good. However, the person on the other end has to have it turned on. We've only recently discovered that some people weren't getting them because they didn't have the settings in the correct place. But yeah, so WhatsApp and sort of mailers. We send out mailers to clients and to temps and things like that. So we're not the height of technology, I'm not going to lie.
Excellent. Good. And we've already had Deborah Meaden and Karen Brady and Stephen Bartlett as people that you look up to. So you must be a Dragon's Den watcher and an apprentice viewer as well, I imagine. Yeah.
No, huge. And Richard Branson as well, because like Richard Branson, I'm very dyslexic. So I've always watched what he does very, very closely, and read his book and his autobiography and things.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed our discussion, Sophie Preston-Hall. Thank you very much indeed for being my guest.
Thank you so much.
Today. If people like to reach out to you or find out more about Catering Elite, what's the best way for them to do that?
We've got a website, cateringelite.co.uk. We're also on all social media platforms, I believe. So we're on X, which was Twitter, and Instagram and Facebook. And I'm on all of them as well, Sophie Preston-Hall. And so reach out to me. I do love chatting to like-minded business people.
Fantastic. Sophie, thank you very much indeed. It's been an absolute
pleasure. Thank you so much for asking me.
I hope you enjoyed that discussion, and if you're building and scaling your own business, you might well be interested in our book, The Entrepreneurial ScaleUp System. And it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's a practical handbook around scaling a business in a structured way, and you can order a copy on all your favorite online retailers, including an audio version, or you can find it and other supporting resources on our website, www.esusgroup.co.uk. That's esusgroup.co.uk, which is esusgroup.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.